I now invite His Excellency Bogdan Orescu, former Minister of Foreign Affairs of Romania, co-chair of the International Law Commission Study Group on Sea Level Rise in relation to international law, and Professor of International Law at the Faculty of Law of the University of Bucharest, to make his statement.
Mr. President, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it is a true honor for me to take part today in this essential debate. I praise the President of the General Assembly for organizing this timely meeting after the historic summit on addressing existential threats of sea level rise of the 21st of September, which I proudly attended. It is indeed the turn of the General Assembly after the Security Council considered the impact of sea level rise on international security this February, and I was honored to act as briefer during that meeting on behalf of the International Law Commission as co-chair of its study group on sea level rise in relation to international law on the progress of our work. On that occasion I mentioned, and I say it again, that sea level rise presents mounting threats for human and state security, and as a direct negative consequence of climate change, it creates global problems affecting the international community as a whole. It therefore requires global solutions, and indeed it is the turn of the General Assembly, after the same Assembly has diligently seized the International Court of Justice by acclamation with the advisory opinion on the obligation of states in respect of climate change. I am again proud that when I was Foreign Minister of Romania, I decided the active participation of my country in the core group of member states which promoted this initiative. Why the threat of sea level rise is existential in physical terms for the member states? Sea level rise affects the coasts, which are pushed landward, and therefore affects the baselines, and very importantly, the maritime zones measured from the baselines, the territorial sea, the contiguous zone, the exclusive economic zone, thus threatening the coastal states' entitlements to these areas and the access to the resources therein. The loss of resources on which the littoral populations depend is prompting increased competition over natural resources, and together with the deterioration of living conditions, also the displacement of these populations and forced migration. And most importantly, the state territory can become fully submerged or fully uninhabitable. So because of all this, sea level rise is a physical existential threat for low-lying coastal states and especially for small island developing states. It is thus imperative to identify practical solutions for states to cope with these implications. This year I co-authored, together with Professor Oral, the additional paper to the 2020 first issues paper, focusing again on important aspects related to the law of the sea and developing the already detailed analysis from the first issues paper. It is obvious that for all states affected by sea level rise, the maritime zones established under UNCLOS are central. So the concept of legal stability, security, certainty and predictability in relation to maritime zones is paramount. The additional paper we have debated at length this year focused inter alia on this essential concept. Our debate this year in the International Law Commission has consolidated the option which I and my co-chair Nilufer Oral already proposed in the first issues paper, and which was endorsed by the International Law Commission and the states from various world regions. This was evidenced not only by the submissions to the ILC and the numerous statements presented in the Sixth Committee, but also by the collective regional and cross-regional declarations, such as the August 2021 Declaration on Preserving Maritime Zones in the Face of Climate Change-Related Sea Level Rise of the Pacific Islands Forum, and the September 2021 Declaration of the Alliance of Small Island States. This solution refers to the interpretation of UNCLOS, that there is no obligation under this treaty to keep baselines and outer limits of maritime zones under review, nor to update charts or coordinates once deposited with the UN Secretary General, and that such maritime zones and the rights and entitlements that flow from them shall continue without reduction, notwithstanding any physical changes prompted by sea level rise. In other words, preserving or fixing or freezing the baselines and outer limits of maritime zones, thus safeguarding the rights of the affected states with respect to their maritime zones. The Member State statements presented last week in the Sixth Committee largely confirmed the support for this solution. But what happens if the entire territory is covered by water? The idea of the continuation of statehood, even if the whole land territory of a state would be submerged, is a matter of great importance, and we need to maintain a coherent approach. And I say it in a direct manner. If the preservation of maritime zones can be legally ensured by freezing the baselines in case of physical landward shift of the coast, which supposes a shrinking of land territory. It is perfectly logical that in case the land territory is totally submerged, statehood must be preserved, because in accordance with UNCLOS, only states are entitled to maritime zones. Indeed, there is a strong presumption of the continuity of statehood, even if the territory, a component of statehood, is fully underwater because of sea level rise. The same consistency is again needed. If in the case of a fully uninhabitable, because of sea level rise, above water territory, there is no claim that statehood disappears, the same logic should be applicable to the equivalent situation of a fully underwater territory because of sea level rise. This issue, related both to the law of the sea and statehood, will be examined by the International Law Commission next year and in our 2025 consolidated final report. To conclude, I fully agree with the views of those member states which consider that even if sea level rise poses an existential threat in a physical sense, especially to the low-lying coastal and island states, international law protects them from such sea level rise. And we in the International Law Commission will make sure that international law matters. And I'm also confident that the International Court of Justice will also hear the voice of those for which the life and hope of the present and future generations depend on the blue ocean. Thank you.